Hello, hello. I am Catherine of Merrim East, and today I am going to talk with you about the foundational skills of throwing. We're going to sail the 7 C's, so to speak. Letter C. The first C is clay. Then we will discuss centering, coning up and down, forming a cylinder, cleaning up your piece, cutting off, and covering. As for the clay, I'm starting with 1 pound. If this is your first go at this, I recommend 1 pound, no more than 1.5 pounds. We're going to form a ball. About the size of a small orange or a large tangerine. Okay, so now we have our clay. Let's talk about centering. Centering is the most critical skill needed to have success with throwing at the pottery wheel. It is also the most frustrating skill to attain. So be patient with yourself, keep at it, keep trying over and over and over. You will be able to grasp it. So let me change the camera so you can have more of a bird's eye view. Here we go. We have our clay. That was our first C. We're going to try to get it into the center of the wheel head as we throw it down with some force. This is next to impossible to achieve if you're a beginner. Sometimes you get lucky though. No worries, just do the best that you can. Okay, so not bad, but as you can see, as you look at the circle, it's off a little bit. So I can slide it. I don't want to lift because I don't want to get air and water under the clay, but I can, pushing down and across, gently slide it a little more toward the center. Once I have it about where I want it, I'm going to give it 2 hard hits to help attach it to the wheel. Now let's talk about how to center. I personally like to anchor my left elbow into my hip. I can feel the bone there so that you can use your body as leverage. This saves a lot of wear on your arms and gives you more control as well as more force toward the center for ease. So again, we're going to start with the left hand, anchor there. Your hand will be down to the wheel head. The left heel of your palm is going to be where the pressure will be applied toward the center of the clay. Might want to turn on your wheel and get that center mark so you can see where you're headed. So before I begin any further, I'm going to wet my hands. Get this left hand in position. The right hand is going to come down on top so that this bone is actually going to be right at the center, and you're using this edge of your hand downward with equal force as you push in to force the clay to center. Okay, at medium to high speed, pushing down and inward. Want your hand all the way down to the wheel head. There we go. Slowly ease off when you start to feel like, oh, it's kind of centered. That's a good beginning. Let's see how that feels. We can check it to see if you're centered. Oh, you can see how that's kind of going off at a not quite dead center still. See how that's moving? That tells me I need to work on coning up and coning down to align the center particles of the clay as well, have more uniformity, and further center the piece. To cone up and cone down, we'll have this left arm in the same position, left elbow anchored at the hip, left hand down to the wheel head with the pressure being applied from your hip all the way through the arm to the heel of your palm toward the center. And the right hand, instead of coming down this time, we're going to have it on the outside at about a 90-degree angle. Right elbow is anchored on that leg, right leg. Right fingers cupped over the left. And we're going to have pressure applied from this side as well as the left hand. So the right and the left are applying equal pressure going downward and inward. And you can cap with your left thumb. Keep pushing downward and inward. Medium speed to form a cone. Sometimes you can carry upward just a little. There we go. There's our first cone. Wet each hand, wet the piece. To cone down, we go back to that very first position we used. Left hand still on that left side, left elbow anchored in the hip, left hand pressing down to the wheel head, right hand coming down and pushing downward and inward. This time, medium high speed. Maybe even full speed. As you start to feel the stillness, you hold it about 20 seconds, give it time. And then slowly release. That's much better. I think I see a piece kind of, I don't know if it's quite center or not. Let's see how it feels. Pretty good. I could almost go there. But let's say it isn't quite where I want it. I'm going to cone up and down a few more times. I tend to stay in the range of 1 to 4 times until it gets where I want it to be. So this time I'm going to speed it up a bit. I can tell it feels a little more cooperative and a little easier to cone up to center that time. So I'm much closer to where I want to be. One of the hardest things, holding it and letting go gradually. Once I felt that stillness, I wanted to freeze. Sometimes you might have to make micro movements, left, right, forward, whatever, until you find that stillness. And then freeze. And hold it for about 20 seconds and gradually release. Let's see how I did. It's pretty good. My hands are moving just a little bit. So I'm going to cone up and down one more time. Hopefully one more time. We'll see. Oh yeah, much more cooperative this time. Look at that. That looks nice. Okay, I think we'll be able to get it this time. There we go. That feels good. We have it centered. So, we had our clay. We've centered by coning up and coning down. Now we want to make a cylinder. The first step in making a cylinder is to drop in. I like to, keeping my arm braced again, have this left hand resting on the outside. It is not going to be applying any pressure. We don't want to have any force. It's just barely touching the piece. It will be a guide for your other hand. Right hand comes in with your thumb. You could, if you prefer, use a finger going straight down, the left thumb as a guide, or two fingers at an angle, or even two fingers braced by your thumb in at an angle. I've learned that for me, using my thumb is less strain on my joints, so I recommend going that route. Okay, wet my hands because I want to keep the pot lubricated. Again, left hand is all the way down to the wheel head, but just barely resting on the outside of the piece. Right hand barely resting on the other side, and the thumb's going to start to come in and downward. If it starts to get dry, then you're going to stop. Okay? Take your sponge, fill it with some water, drop in just a few drops of water, and go again. Gets dry, you'll add more water. Now, as I start to move further and further down, this is where having my left hand on the outside is helpful as a guide, because what I'm going to do is go down as far as I can with my thumb, switching over to my fingers to get down to what feels like the same level as the top of my left pinky finger. See? There. So I'm coming down to what'll feel like I'm about there. Then I'll stop and check. Okay, that feels kind of close. If my thumb couldn't go down further, I could use my finger. Okay, so I've cleaned out the water, and I'm going to stop the wheel to check the depth of my base, the foot. I'm going to drop the needle all the way down to the wheel head, take my first finger down to the surface of the floor, hold it against the needle, and pull out. That's where I am. That's not bad. If I wanted to have a large amount of room for trimming, that could be good. Personally, I like to have it a little further up, down. So I'm going to open up just a little bit more. Okay, went down a little more. Okay, so now, as we're forming our cylinder, we have already centered. We're forming our cylinder. We've dropped in. Now we're going to open up. Add water. Get each hand wet. Left hand in that same position, just resting, not applying pressure. Right hand goes in. I like to use my second finger to start, moving to both fingers when I can, if I can. My left thumb is hooked over this side, which is a guide, and I'm going to wind up opening up that left hand so that I can just pull straight back, using both as a unit. My elbows are in for support, and I'm pulling across the bottom evenly. I don't want to dig in, and I don't want to lift up at one end to form a curve unless I'm forming a bulb. That's another story. But for a cylinder, we want to keep that level. So here we go. What did I say? Okay. So this is in that same classic position, left thumb over, right hand has that second finger into the bottom. I'm going to open up my left hand just a little so that I can pull straight back, pulling evenly. This is a medium to slow speed. Take your time. Once I start to sense that wall is getting beyond the base, then I want to stop. Might even want to curl under just a little. This is a good time to check again to see if you're happy with what you've done. That's pretty good. That gives me some room for trimming. Could stand to be a touch lower, but that is not bad. Okay, so we've dropped in, we've opened up. Now we're going to compress. This is important. In between each and every pull from here on out, we're going to be compressing, at least the walls. So to compress the walls, I take the thumb and the first finger of the left hand and rest them on the outside. We're not pinching in, not pulling, just barely touching, because they're just going to be our guide. The first finger of the right hand is going to come down and apply pressure. This is where the pressure comes from. Those are just a guide. So, medium speed. There we go. See how we're kind of leveling that off? To have it be about the same thickness as the walls. I want to do that each time. We also want to compress the floor as we had just opened up. For that, you can take your second finger starting at the center, going to 3 o'clock and back to center, 3 o'clock and back to center several times until it feels evened out, applying pressure downward, not too much, but enough that you even off the surface. You can also use a slightly damp sponge and apply pressure that way. I like that approach. Okay, so we have our piece centered. We've opened up, compressed. We're ready to pull a wall. I like to get a wet sponge, heavy with water, into my right hand. I'm going to use my first finger bent at the knuckle, almost forming a J, so that the flat part of the knuckle is going to be down on the wheel head at the bottom. We're going to have our elbows in, supported at the body. The middle two fingers will be on the inside, and there will be, if they're even with the top of the floor, and this hand is all the way down to the base, that means they're going to be slightly above the right hand. And we're going to gather our clay, and we're going to be pulling upward and inward at a pace that matches the rate of speed of your wheel. That will take practice. The main thing is to not go too quickly, because that forms a tornado and adds too much weight at the top and messes up the pot. If you go too slowly, then you may work your way through rather than form a wall. So at a medium-high speed now, medium speed perhaps from the beginning. We'll wet each hand, or wet the left hand, have it on the inside, elbows braced, right hand with that knuckle down to the wheel head, pushing up against it. Sponge is there just to add some lubrication, some water. We're going to have just enough pressure to gather your clay and pull upward, almost as if you're coming to your nose, and inward toward the center at an angle. This is to fight the centrifugal force that wants to make a bowl. Gives you a slight angle for that first pull. Okay, when you get to the top, you gradually release out, and again, compress. Not pinching in, pushing down. Also, between each pull, get the excess water off of the bottom of the pot, because that would weaken the floor of your piece. So that was our initial pull. We have a little bit of an angle coming in. Let's go again. This time we're going to be a little more aggressive with the amount of clay. Take your time. You are moving the clay. You're not letting it move you. And follow through all the way to the top, yet slowly releasing as you get to the top. Compress. The inside looks good. Wet that left hand, wet sponge in the right hand, wet the inside wall of the pot, and go again. With each subsequent pull, you're going to slow down the speed of your pull. Sometimes this is hard because we get impatient. It's pretty important. Also, with each subsequent pull, we let it straighten up a little bit to have more straight walls. Another way you can lubricate the walls of your pot would be to have either of the first two fingers of your left hand on each side, not applying any pressure, just barely touching, and let water drizzle down to each side. It's always helpful to wet that left hand and have water in your sponge. Elbows in. Gather your clay by pushing in a little at the bottom, about a pea-size amount, and slowly, steadily pull upward. It's our third pull, so I'm going to make it a little more straight. Get closer to the top. I'm reducing the pressure from side to side, the inside and outside, until I let go, compress the rim. Okay, there we go. And again. Each subsequent pull allows me to be a little more patient and a little more controlled, so that I can form even walls. I am moving the clay rather than let it move me. Also creating muscle memory, so that down the road, you may be able to speed up this process. Compress the rim. Clean the water out of the bottom. There we go. That's a nice cylinder. I might like for those walls to be a little more thin, so I'm going to do one more pull. But that could be a good stopping point. I won't slow it down though. When you grab clay at the bottom, you can gain height. Compress the rim. up the inside. There we go. We have our cylinder. So to recap, we had our clay. We started with a pound for the first time, formed a ball, threw it on the wheel head. Then we began centering. That's where we applied pressure from the side and the top with the elbow braced in the hip to start to get it attached to the wheel and begin the centering process. Then we added coning up and coning down, coning. Then we started to form our cylinder. We dropped in, we opened up, and we pulled our walls repeatedly to get it to this point. Now we're ready for the next C, which would be cleaning up your piece. If I were to cut this off of the wheel right now, I'd have jagged edges that would make trimming rather difficult and likely unsuccessful. So it is important to clean the foot of your piece. Also, when you're getting ready to lift the piece off, it helps to clean the slip off of the sides. So we're going to work on cleaning up. Cleaned off the wheel head. Since this is a straight wall, or somewhat straight wall, I'm going to use the 90-degree angle of my wood rib. If it were a bowl, I'd have to come in and allow for that angle to come out. I'd have to come in down lower. But with this, I can come in like that. I'm going to be slowing down now. I'm getting down into cleaning up or shaping. If I wanted to shape the piece, I would be applying pressure from the inside with my hand or at the rib while it was going at a very slow speed to add shape. Today, since we're talking about a cylinder, we're skipping that part. So I'm going to take my wood rib, have it all the way down to the wheel head. I'm coming in at about 4 o'clock to let it start to clean off that foot. Might want to do this repeatedly, a few times. So it seems somewhat level. Okay. Now that I have that somewhat level with the side of the pot, I'm going to put it back in the same position. I'm going to put my left hand in so that the finger is matching like this. This finger is only providing support. I'm not applying any pressure. If there's any pressure at all, it's more from this side, but not much. It's really more a matter of just cleaning off the slip off of the side at this point. And I'm bringing both up as one unit. Cleans off the slip and can help straighten the wall a touch if needed. Gradually lift away. There we go. Compress the rim. Sometimes that can take time. Just give it a little bit of time so it continues to level off and smooth. For one final touch, you can clean off a little with your sponge. There we go. Another touch that I personally think is very nice is to form a shadow, to bevel under just a little. For that, you're going to hold your rib like this, with this coming in as low as you can get it, touching the wheel head. And you're going to go in about 1/4 of an inch under the piece, slowly. There we go. There we have it. Now we've cleaned up our piece and it's ready to be cut off. Clean off your wheel head. Clean your hands. So that when you get ready to lift the piece off, you will not be adding slip to it. Okay, take your cutting wire. Usually the wire in the beginner's kit is longer, so you'd be wrapping some around your middle two fingers to get it to the length you want. This one's shorter, so I can actually just put my pinky fingers in there. But in any case, you get it the width you want, and you have your two first index fingers on the wire to apply pressure. Get it down to the wheel head, applying pressure downward consistently as you pull toward you, allowing enough width for the widest part of the pot. So again, downward and towards you, downward and towards you, downward and towards you. There we go. All the way through to the other side. You're done. To lift off, double check the dryness of your hands. And we're going to place your hands on either side of the pot, barely touching, just gently. And we're going to lift toward you and up, toward me and up. There we go. There's your first piece. Have fun. Oh, wait, no, there was one more scene. What is it? Let's see. We have clay, centering, coning, up and down, forming our cylinder, cleaning off the bottom, cutting off, covering. That's what it is. It's very important to cover your piece once it's done so that you can avoid cracking. Clay shrinks as it dries, and if it dries too quickly, some parts will dry faster than others, and that creates a tug of war and causes cracking. So be sure to cover it with a little bit of plastic once it's firmed up enough that you can do that without messing up your rim, or place it on a shelf that is covered in plastic, or a slow drying rack of some sort to allow it to dry slowly, at least for the first week or so. Keep checking it. Once it feels like it's at the leather hard stage, then you can start to let it air dry more and more until it's bone dry and ready to be fired. There we go, folks. You've sailed the 7 seas of the foundational skills of throwing at the pottery wheel. I hope you enjoy applying these. Take care.